subscribe and, like the video. Context here is that Musk supports AfD, the far-right party in Germany. Not only that, but also Elon Musk has talked with the leadership of the AfD, the neo-Nazi party in Germany, about how Hitler was actually a socialist, doing historical revisionism surrounding the okay? Elon Musk has also unbanned every single Nazi in North America and around the globe after purchasing Twitter. Elon Musk in that process has also personally followed neo-Nazi accounts. Elon Musk has highlighted neo-Nazi accounts. Elon Musk famously responded to a person doing the classic neo-Nazi fascist anti-Semitic statement that like Jews are doing unlimited immigration from the third world of like lower status people specifically to destroy Western civilization. Elon Musk responded to that person and said, "You have said the absolute truth." That ideology was echoed initially by the synagogue shooter that's responsible for the worst anti-Semitic hate crime in the United States of America in modern American history. Yeah. Did you get a haircut? Yeah, I did. I logged on to IG today. My first reel was Andrew Tate doing the salute too. My feed going right. Everything is going right. Okay? Everything is going right. I'm not going to lie to you. Everything is going right. I see no reason to deny this. I see no reason to avoid speaking on it. Virtually everything is going right. There are a lot of people who are going to feel more comfortable openly stating their stupid perspectives in their belligerent reactionary perspectives. And there is going to be a lot of people also people who are already on the far right are going to be more open about their neo-Nazi their neo-Nazi tendencies. People who are center right are going to become more far right. And people who had previously masked their true, silly political perspective will be more open about it. They'll be more open about their political perspectives. And also, the third category, is that a lot of content creators that look at the sphere of influence online will also personally fake it like they're right wing. Specifically so that they can get clout, okay? That is the case. That is what's going to happen. It's been happening already, and to a certain degree, I think that has also led to, the Trump victory, or at least like a lot of the people who, who normally wouldn't care about politics found themselves in the throes of right-wing politics, and that is where we are. That is where we're at. The reality of the matter is all you got is one another. Community organizing, labor organizing, because the Democratic Party has also kind of dropped the ball, okay? Democratic Party's dropped the ball. There is no leftist momentum. There is no coalition of ideologically minded, pro-labor focused, truly resistant people in this country. And the institutions are also not going to hold up a strong fight. Okay? That is the problem. That is the issue. That has been the issue, but it's going to become a much larger issue now that Trump is in power and all of his cronies are actively working to ruin the world, not just the country. So, can leftists take advantage of these next 4 years? No, I don't think so. I don't think so, but it's not because I'm being pessimistic. It's because there is no underlying structural help that people can rely on. So we're just going to keep building it. Okay? We're going to keep building it. A lot of people keep asking me like, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? What can we do, Hasan? What can we do, Hasan? What can we do, Hasan? And right now, we just have to be in a holding pattern. We have to try and protect our marginalized neighbors, whether they're undocumented, whether they're trans. That's what we have to do. You have to hold the line, and eventually, I think, through that process, we will be able to figure out a way out of this situation. Okay? Question mark. There hasn't been a better time to build legitimacy for a third option. In the upcoming months, I will talk more extensively about what these defensive measures will look like. To the best of my ability within the legal structure. A legal structure that is obviously getting increasingly more restrictive as time goes on. Okay? But we'll figure it out. Together, We will figure it out. So, on that note, let's get started. Can you talk about the trans executive order today? I got my gender marker changed on all my government docs, and now I'm really scared. Yeah, I will talk about that in a little bit. Okay, so first and foremost, there is the contradictions will inherently worsen. Okay, the contradictions will worsen in this time, and I think a lot of people will be agitated. I'll just say this much before I go into January 6th defendants are being released from custody and talking about liberal media and what they're choosing to pay attention to and what they're not necessarily offering a lot of coverage to. One thing I will say is this. Last time around in 2016, everyone was trying to organize. Everyone was excited. They even brunchified the hashtag liberal resistance. But the problem then was that hashtag liberal resistance that was also backed by institutions as well, oftentimes fell short of what was necessary because that kind of resistance was inherently commodified and worked to basically filter back into the Democratic Party and whatever their interests were. And that kind of resistance also almost entirely revolved around the boundaries that the Democratic Party had presented. And what I mean by this is that it was not inherently anti-capitalist, and it was maybe at most, in its most radical form, was usually revolving around identity markers, okay? It rarely ever had class analysis. It was not a real resistance against the proto-fascist administration of Donald Trump, okay? Stop hating Dems, bro. That's not what I'm not hating on Democrats right now. I don't think you understand what I'm saying. The Democratic Party is separate from the Democratic Party's base of support. I have a firm and committed belief that many liberals that, vote for the Democratic Party and never really think about it is many of these liberals, I think, they would be easily on board with significantly more quote unquote radical politics if they were presented with it. Okay, that's it. Like with the exception of certain things, with the exception of certain initiatives that were taken in this time frame, most of the resistance, or the broad majority of the resistance, came from liberal media, which commodified said resistance against proto-fascism, but also pacified it. Okay, I don't think it's going to happen this time around because people are inevitably going to look for alternatives. They're going to look for alternative ways of thinking. They're going to look for alternative ways of organizing, and it does kind of seem like the media apparatus and the organizations that previously were tasked with like defending some of the marginalized people and the processes that the Trump administration will enact, the awful cruelty that the Trump administration will enact, they've kind of also dropped the ball, right? Can you provide an example of commodification? Yes. A great example of commodification is what happened with Black Lives Matter. The Black Lives Matter movement was a radical one. It was a decentralized movement. It was built out of activists on the streets who truly were being impacted by the disproportionate targeting of police. Okay? And their demands were seen as far too radical, far too disruptive. And under the Obama administration, Black Lives Matter was kind of like the Gaza situation under Joe Biden. Liberals hated Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter. Obama straight up said that, the Black Lives Matter people were thugs. Okay. I still remember the Pod Johns apologizing under the Trump administration, the first Trump administration, that Black Lives Matter was actually a good thing, and they were wrong initially in their assessment of BLM. But what happened under the Trump administration? This inherently radical, decentralized movement basically got packaged up and commodified, where you had Walmart and numerous other mega corporations offering aesthetic support to BLM. TikTokers who would vote for Donald Trump later down the line were throwing up the black fist on their TikTok profiles. It became a commodity. It became a thing that everyone could say. It became a thing that everyone was on board with, and it was substanceless. Ultimately, the demands being made by these activists were valid. They were moral. They were valid. They made sense. They wanted to spend more money on their communities. They wanted to make sure They wanted to make sure that these communities got more funds to avoid further violence, to deal with the socioeconomic conditions that they were facing. But a lot of those funds, especially in the local taxing structure and the local budget allotment, was going directly back to the police that were harming them. Okay. And what ended up happening in that process is not only did the quote unquote international BLM organization basically was run by grifters, a bunch of the other people that were tasked with being the spokesperson for Black Lives Matter ended up working underneath the Democratic Party, or at least doing their own thing. And there was a lot of mismanagement of funds in the process as well. And the other people who were activists, like the actual street level activists of Black Lives Matter, all died under mysterious circumstances, like 6 of them. And the ones that didn't die became spokespeople for the Democratic Party or had their own fallout internally. And the international organization of BLM basically turned into the International Organization of Black Lives Matter turned into this meme that you mismanagement of funds. That's funny. Yeah, no, I'm being very charitable here. No, it was grift. It was grifting. Okay, people took funds and spent it on their own personal nonsense. And the International Black Lives Matter organization is basically a grift operation that's like pro-Israel now, but also simultaneously constantly under, constantly getting cooked by regulators for also doing charity fraud. So my point is, that's a perfect example of the commodification of a otherwise initially radical movement. That's number one. Number two, what else happened? What else happened in that process? Not only was it diluted, but the entire movement was turned into a joke ultimately, even though the demands initially were just. Okay? Even though the initial demands were just. But it turned into a joke, and it turned into a call sign for the reactionary right to basically say, you guys are bad. You like BLM? Look at BLM. All the corporations love BLM, right? And in that process, millions of Americans, especially young Americans, that had their first foray into radical politics and protesting the government, learned a very sad lesson. That lesson that they learned was that no matter what you do, you go out and you take it to the streets, you protest, and then you go out and you vote. You know, hold your nose and you go and you vote for Joe Biden because he's the only option that can defeat Donald Trump, it seems, right? And what did these people get in return for that? The lesson that they learned is nothing. You get nothing. You will shut up, and the Democratic Party won't even give you the already neutered 8 can't wait bill that they said that they were going to pass once they are in power. So for a lot of people, they were like, okay, well, that's the lesson I learned. I take it to the streets. I do all the right things. I do all the right things that they wrote in books. They told me I'm supposed to protest in the streets, okay, within the confines of the First Amendment. They told me I'm supposed to go out and vote for my politicians. I did both of those things, and then I got nothing in return. None of these demands came to fruition. So for a lot of people, that's the very sad lesson that they learned in their first foray into radical politics. And I suspect this is part of the reason why some of them actually turned right-wing and reactionary, okay? And I suspect this is also the reason why many of them didn't vote for the Democrats at all, just didn't vote at all. And last but not least, I think that this ultimately, like the nihilism that kicked in that process ultimately created this ground for the reactionary right to come back stronger than before. Now, having said that, we also obviously saw the Democratic administration, that's supposed to be the adults in the room, that are supposed to be supposed to be the adults that are focused on maintaining the rule-based international order, completely cast that aside. Numerous wars broke out, and our competent leadership was woefully incompetent in the face of all of that. Okay? Now, you have to fight back against this kind of nihilistic attitude. You have to fight back against it no matter what, because if you actually succumb to the whims of nihilism, well, you might find yourself in the throes of reactionary politics, just like all these other people. So that's why I always point out that change does not happen overnight, and that it's marginal, and it takes a very long time, and that you're supposed to do these things not because you want immediate gratification, but you're supposed to do these things because you want to leave a better future for the next generation. So you have to keep going no matter what, and I will do the same. That's it. So on that note, let's get to the January 6th defendants emerged from custody after Trump issues pardons, and the police, the Brotherhood of the Police, the unions are very upset, it seems, that Donald Trump pardoned people who beat the shit out of cops.
It's now President Trump. After he pardoned and commuted the sentences of the January 6 rioters, some of the most high-profile defendants have already been released from prison. It's drawn angry responses from police. Senior political correspondent Rachel Scott has the story. Good morning, Rachel.
George, good morning to you. And the officers here that defended this Capitol on January 6 told me they started receiving these automated courtesy phone calls from the Department of Justice, letting them know that the rioters who they testified against, the ones who were convicted for assaulting and attacking them, were now being released from prison.
This morning, hundreds of rioters, including those who assaulted police officers on January 6th, released from prison. President Donald Trump asked why he commuted the sentences of people like Stuart Rhodes, founder of the Oath Keepers militia, charged with sedition and sentenced to 18 years.
I thought their sentences were ridiculous and excessive.
Trump previously said he would look at individual cases, but the president, within hours of taking the oath, pardoned nearly all of the 1,600 people charged in the attack. 140 officers were injured as the mob stormed the Capitol. Officer Daniel Hodges screaming for help, crushed by surging rioters. Those rioters pardoned, or their sentences were commuted by Trump. In an interview, Officer Hodges, who is still on the force, telling me it's a miscarriage of justice. Former Capitol Police Officer Harry Dunn testified about facing off against the mob.
I told them to just leave the Capitol, and in response they yelled, "No, man, this is our house."
He says
oh yeah, he did pardon Ross Ulbricht, or whatever his name is, the Silk Road guy, and I will be talking about that. I have covered it in the past, the history of the Silk Road and like what happened to Silk Road, and also I will do that today again. I remember watching like a documentary on it on stream before, and I will do that as well. Yeah, he did. And he did that as a gimme to the libertarians too, because once again, no matter what, this man understands. Yeah, here's me reacting to the dark side of the Silk Road. So, yeah, I will probably react to like another long and convoluted documentary about what happened with Silk Road and where it went. But that's it. Trump doesn't care. He does not give a heck. He does not give a damn. Okay, he does not care. He will give you that delicious, juicy W that you crave. Okay, do you think Ross is as rich as Elon given his crypto wallets? I don't know. He does not care if his most loyal hogs actually beat up cops. He will unban them. If there is a vote to gain, and or if there is some level of confidence that he can get from people, if there is some kind of confidence that he can get from a key constituency, no matter how small, he's gonna unban them. He's gonna unban those people. Okay, January 6th rioter already arrested on gun charges. That's amazing. My man said, Shawshank Redemption. Put me back in, Chief. I don't know how to live. Any other way. Put me back in. The wonderful nature of the American criminal justice system. He said, put me back in, please.
President is trying to rewrite history.
The officers feel hurt and betrayed, and it's a slap in the face.
In an internal memo obtained by ABC News, the chief of Capitol Police saying, when there is no price to pay for violence against law enforcement, it sends a message that politics matter more than our first responders. The president's pardons include more than 600 people charged with assaulting or resisting law enforcement. On Capitol Hill, many Republicans not pushing back.
I think like the annoying part of all of this, to me at least, is that one, this is unpopular, but it still doesn't matter because like he's giving his most active base of support, his biggest sycophants, a major W. He's saying like, listen, you stood by me and I'm going to stand by you. Okay. That's important. That's important for Trump, especially because if he wants to have like some semblance of brown shirts who will do his bidding in ways that like even the police or the military might not be able to do within the existing legal confines, these guys will now feel emboldened. Okay, that's really important to understand. They will feel emboldened. They will feel like Donald Trump has their back. So that's really important for him. But the thing that's really frustrating to me about this is that like you can go to jail for a million different stupid things in this country. Okay, if you go to jail, if you're poor, you have a very high likelihood of finding yourself within the throes of the criminal justice system. And unfortunately for many, the American criminal justice system is not exactly open-minded. They will cook you. They will ruin your life for the rest of your life. Okay? So that double standard here is probably frustrating for many Americans who are like, well, you know, my dad got a resisting arrest charge for speaking back to a police officer at a regular traffic stop. Okay. And he had to spend time in prison for that. But these guys actually literally beat the shit out of cops in an insurrection. And now they're walking free and pardoned and have their records expunged. Like, that's crazy, right? My buddy spit on a cop and got 3 years. Yeah, that's considered assault on a peace officer. And straight up, judges will throw the book at you. Okay. It's crazy.
2021, Texas Senator John Cornyn said those who planned and participated in the violence that day should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law.
It's the president's prerogative.
Are you comfortable with that, though? Does that send the right message from your party?
That's not the question. The question is who has the authority, and the president has the authority.
As I've said before, we're looking forward to the next 4 years, not the last 4.
Others suggested the pardons went too far.
I do not support the pardons if they were given to people who committed violent crimes, including assaulting police officers or breaking windows.
But Alabama,
I hate these people so much. I just think it's all aesthetics. They behave, the Republicans that are at the edge of the party, and this is like an especially dying breed. Okay. Republicans at the edge of the party that are an especially dying breed, like Susan Collins, okay, are so annoying because they always hit that Democrat line where they're like, we are looking at this. I am very concerned. I'm very concerned. It's like, oh, really? You're concerned, Susan Collins? Great. Thank you. I hadn't heard that 700,000 times the last time Donald Trump was president. And then you always go out of your way to vote alongside Donald Trump 90+% of the time. I'm always looking into it. I'm Susan. I'm always looking into it, and I'm always feeling very concerned. Okay. Also, here's the other part of this. Look at that. Truth bomb, baby. Biden pardoning Hunter is more unpopular than Trump pardoning the January 6 rioters per Wall Street Journal poll. Hunter pardon, 22% support, 74% oppose. January 6 pardons, 43% support, 54% oppose. Okay? That's a truth nuke for you, okay? There you go. There you go. How is that possible? What are you talking about? One is read as a spoiled Nepo baby who was presented as like the worst villain of the Biden administration. In many instances, unjustifiably, because he was just a crackhead fail son, okay? And they greatly overemphasized his crimes and routinely lied about it. They said that he was like doing crazy wheeling and dealing at the behest of the Biden crime family or whatever. The January 6th, the January 6th political hostages was presented as like a group of, political hostages that were unfairly maligned and unjustifiably prosecuted by the big, scary Brandon administration. In some instances, you have to remember, media is very powerful, okay? And in other circumstances, you have to remember, January 6 jet ski dealership owners and numerous other people are closer, both aesthetically and also through their class position, to the random hogs that are living in these random neighborhoods, as opposed to the fail son of a deeply unpopular, decrepit old man. The fail son of a deeply unpopular, decrepit old man who was the president, okay? But ultimately, it doesn't matter. Popularity and popular support for these actions don't matter. That is the point I wanted to make. Okay? That is the point I wanted to make. It does not matter. Do you see what I'm saying? When is the last time, with the exception of Trump actually pushing a stay of execution for TikTok, or with the exception of Donald Trump before he came into office, pushing Israel to at least follow through on the ceasefire in the interim period as they light the West Bank on fire, obviously. With those two exceptions, and also, I guess, like swapping out Joe Biden 100 days out from the election, when have you ever seen the American government in all of its different units, right? Not just like the legislative body, but the judiciary, all the way up to the Supreme Court. When is the last time you've seen the American government respond to popular sentiment with, we hear you, we see you, we're going to enact this agenda? I ask you seriously, I ask you sincerely, when is the last time you've seen any member of the government successfully push for, in our lifetimes, successfully push for something that virtually everybody wanted? Minimum wage rage in like 2007. Not to mention that leftists are also anti-establishment when joined with anti-establishment hawks to hold rich Nepo drug addicts is pretty bipartisan. I guess stimmy checks is one of them. Stimmy checks would be a good example of this. Okay. But even then, that was like a necessity. Even Obamacare was like gutted and destroyed. It was supposed to have the public option, and they cooked it and they destroyed it and lied about it actively, as the Democratic Party did the classic move of like trying to find bipartisan compromise with a party that was not interested in compromising with them at all, and were getting rewarded for behaving in an obstructionist manner and lying about everything related to Obamacare in general. But the stimmy checks was a necessity, you know? It was a necessity. So my point is, I guess you could also say marriage, maybe. Was that? I mean, I guess that's another one. Fair. That's a good one. Okay. That's another good one. So the point is that the American government does not necessarily care about popular sentiment. You know what I mean? They just don't care. They don't really care at all. And I don't think that gay marriage was at the time seen as like a bipartisan thing that the entirety of the country wanted. If we're being real, if we're being really real. People are saying cannabis, but that's another great example. Like, this is federal level decriminalization of marijuana has been like 90% popular in perpetuity. Okay. Universal background checks, 90% popularity in perpetuity. 75% of NRA card carrying members want universal background checks. That would be a federal piece of legislation. So like, even when you think about all of the most popular policies, it's always just like, it's always something that the government has to neuter effectively. Okay. But I can give you a million examples of the government, whether it be the Supreme Court or whether it be the legislative body, actively working against the overwhelming majority's wishes time and time again, whether it be enforcing a ceasefire in Gaza by denying weapons transfers. Like, this was objectively a popular concept. Or even if the denying weapons transfers was not, even if that wasn't a popular part of this idea, okay, the ceasefire was a popular concept. And obviously, the only way to do that would be by forcing Israel to, concede. And if they didn't, you just refuse to give them weapons. They didn't do that. Okay. Universal health care, not happening. Like, there are plenty of popular things that can only pass through ballot measures on a state by state basis, because the national parties don't actually care to do anything. They don't actually care to enforce the popular agenda of the people. Donald Trump, on the other hand, doesn't necessarily care about the overarching popular sentiment, and neither do the Democrats. But when Democrats actually do something that's like objectively unpopular, like, finding bipartisan compromise for the TikTok ban that the Democratic president signs into law, they're doing that at the behest of their corporate benefactors. Now, does Donald Trump do that as well? Of course. And he does it in even worse ways than the Democrats do, like the tax cuts for the super wealthy, right? That he passed in 2017, 2018. Having said that, every now and then, Donald Trump loves to get a good W in the corner. Okay? Donald Trump loves to get a good W in his corner. And that's what's going on here. Okay? That's what's happening here.
That's Tommy Tuberville, who once said rioters who broke in should, quote, pay the price, now says he fully backs Trump's call.
With Ross Ulbricht.
But we're talking about people that were beating officers with fire hydrants, with metal batons. Is that acceptable to you?
No.
Those people
no,
were
that's
pardoned.
not acceptable, but I didn't see it. So.
What do you mean?
It's on video.
I didn't see it.
And of course, Trump going back on his own words after the attack, he once said that those committed violent acts would pay the price, George.
Rachel Scott, thanks very much. Let's also get a question about Pete Hegseth. He's the president's pick for defense secretary, facing new allegations now.
Yeah, senators on the Armed Services Committee, George, have obtained a sworn affidavit from the former sister-in-law of Pete Hegseth, who claims that he was abusive to his second wife, so much so that she had to hide in the closet and that they had a code word in case she needed help. Now, she does acknowledge that she never personally witnessed any or physical abuse, and an attorney for Hegseth is denying these allegations, including those allegations of abuse, flat out. His nomination, though, is moving forward with the vote expected as early as this week, George.
Rachel Scott, thanks very much.
Republicans have long said you guys back the blue. How do you justifiably say that when 6 rioters who attacked Capitol?
Like, I'm going to be honest with you. On the one hand, this is a newsworthy thing that Donald Trump did. And it is kind of wild that he did blanket pardons. Okay. On the other hand, the media is back to doing hypocrisy baiting and hypocrisy fishing. And I think at a certain point, we all got to take a deep breath and recognize that, number one, January 6th stuff clearly doesn't play well to the broader audience, and they just don't care about it as much as, liberals do, like hyper invested, media obsessed liberals do. Okay. And last but not least, and this is perhaps the most important point that I want to address. Okay. Nobody cares about hypocrisy. Like no Republican is ever going to turn around and be like, oh man, you really caught me here. Donald Trump pardoned police beaters. Oh, I'm really going to reconsider my position here. It is not going to happen. You will never, ever get a Republican to turn around and say, you know what? This is a bridge too far for me. If that was the case, then the Democrats would have won the last election, because this is what they ran on. Okay. This is what they ran on. They constantly ran on the January 6th stuff over and over and over again. And I think it melted the minds of a lot of liberals who are basically just slammed to their televisions, like hyper focusing on what they see from the TV. And they just could not contend. Okay. They just could not comprehend the reality that, like, people outside of people that are, watching MSNBC and CNN that are like perma stuck in that little media ecosystem, an increasingly smaller audience of people, mind you. Outside of that, no one really cared about it. Okay. Police beaters is far from the truth, but you know that. Are you telling me that on January 6th, there weren't people who actually, one, pepper sprayed cops, and two, beat the shit out of cops? Because I'm not talking about like the cops that killed themselves a day after or whatever. I'm not talking about that at all. Okay. I'm talking about what I saw, like, on video. I was basically there. We were there, dude. Come on, dude. Like, there's a lot of beat the shit out of, I disagree with, chatter. That's crazy. No, come on, dude. Come on. And that's insane. They just showed it in the tapes. So you're going to make me, oh Lord, you're going to turn me into a silly little, annoying little lib here. Okay. If you keep this up, we were basically at the Capitol, partially because all the people thought there would be no repercussions for this. So they filmed themselves and actively talked about how awesome it was that they were doing the things that they were doing. So we got deep access to everything that was going on. Part of the problem, from my perspective, I think, part of the problem was that there was so much footage readily available that it took thousands of man hours from the FBI to investigate all of that thoroughly, because everybody was like, what? We will never get in trouble for this. This is crazy. Why are you trying so hard to make the police as victims here? They are class traitors. Don't you know? Okay, shut up, Ismail. My point is, you can't even talk back to a cop in broad daylight in the normal world without possibly getting some criminal penalties for it. But you can apparently beat the shit out of a cop when you're storming the Capitol, and it's fine. Trump will pardon you. Excuse me, I didn't know it was like that. Bro, in the United States of America, you can't even protest Israel, okay? You get 3,100 students were arrested for protesting against Israel's apartheid in this country under the Democratic leadership. Thousands more are permanently in jail for their participation in the Black Lives Matter protests. Thousands of people, okay? 1,000 plus people that were arrested, prosecuted, and went to jail for their participation in an insurrection where they did beat the shit out of cops, even though the cops were seemingly pretty much on their side, okay? And guess what? It's fine. You can do all of that. They were tactical love taps, bro. Chill. They were hitting the cops with respect and patriotism as they calmly enter the premise to stop your revisionism. Yeah. That's crazy, man. Like, look at this, bro. Like, that's crazy. That's crazy. I guess he just slipped and fell, dude, and nothing else, you know?
So look, everybody can describe this however they want. The president has the pardon and commutation authority. It's his decision, and I think what was made clear all along is that peaceful protests and people who engage in that should never be punished. There was a weaponization of the Justice Department. There was a weaponization of the events. The following, the prosecutions that happened after January 6th. It was a terrible time and a terrible chapter in America's history. The president's made his decision. I don't second guess those. And yes, it's kind of my ethos, my worldview. We believe in redemption. We believe in second chances. If you would argue that those people didn't pay a heavy penalty.
Bro, that's awesome. Like, they're talking like prison abolitionists right now, man. They're like, hey, man, we have to have a focus on rehabilitation rather than incarceration. I think it's been far too long in this nation's dark past where we have decided that that the draconian nature of the criminal justice system must be as torturous as possible. This is clearly not a successful method. These people have paid the ultimate price for being law-abiding, peaceful citizens as they peacefully beat the shit out of cops on the Capitol Rotunda. Okay? I wouldn't dare. But if I was, I wouldn't have liked it. But I've totally forgotten about it now because my Lord King Savior, Donald Trump, decided that they're going to get pardoned.
Penalty, having been incarcerated and all of that's up to you. But the president's made a decision. We move forward.
These guys will straight up say that, like, the overwhelming majority of Black Lives Matter protests did not turn into riots. The ones that did turn into riots because cops were brutalizing the protesters. Okay, they always escalate. And given the anti-cop nature of the Black Lives Matter protests, of course, cops were going to always escalate and be brutal. And they act like every city was burned to the goddamn ground. Meanwhile, these dudes straight up in broad daylight were like, we love rioting and going into we love rioting and going into the Capitol building. Okay? We love it. I can't wait to apprehend physically and violently Nancy Pelosi and do a citizen's arrest on Nancy Pelosi. Here, I brought my zip ties with me. I can't wait to do that. My name is such and such. They've literally did this in broad daylight, and these guys are like, these were just peaceful people that wanted to see the inside of the people's house. Right? I didn't realize that it was illegal for the people of the United States of America to enter the people's house.
There are better days ahead of us. That's what we're excited about. We're not looking backwards, we're looking forward. Just second row.
The leaders of the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers were freed following their pardons yesterday. At the time back in 2021, you urged them to stand back and stand by. Is there now a place for them in the political conversation?
Well, we have to say they've been given a pardon. I thought.
Oh my God. This journalist basically is like, hey, are you going to utilize the Proud Boys to do your most violent bidding? And he's like, we'll see.
Their sentences were ridiculous and excessive.
We'll have to see. Today, Tario spoke to Alex Jones and told him, quote, the people who did this, they need to feel the heat, they need to be put behind bars, and they need to be prosecuted. More now on all this from CNN's Donny O'Sullivan, who was outside the D.C. jail last night when all this went down, and spoke today with some of the pardoned inmates.
You're a true patriot. I don't even know what to feel. I mean, I guess I should feel joy. Maybe I'm just shocked.
The end of a long road for Rachel Powell, pardoned by President Trump and released Tuesday from a jail here in Washington, D.C.
Patriots are in control.
The Pink Hat
Patriots
lady
are
when
in
footage
control.
emerged
They're
of her
razzing up.
breaking
Patriots,
a window
razz
at
up.
the Capitol with an ice axe during the January 6 attack. A mom to 8 and a grandmother to 7, I interviewed Rachel before she began what was supposed to be a years-long prison sentence last year.
How'd I have time to plan an insurrection when my life is busy like this?
On her release on Tuesday, she was met by activists who gave her new clothes, new
gotta
boots, and a new pink hat.
Woo! Glory! Hallelujah! Thank you, Lord! This man came from the Philadelphia jail. He got out at 3 a.m. That doesn't make sense. He's wearing prison shoes and Philadelphia's finest prison gear.
Pardoned January 6ers from elsewhere began arriving in Washington, like William Patrick Sarsfield III, who was convicted of a felony offense of obstruction of law enforcement during a civil disorder.
Well, I was heard through different apps and different programs and different phone calls from people that we still had brothers and sisters that were still locked up and haven't been released. And being somebody that's been in D.C., that everybody should be released. If it's a pardon for J6ers, it's for all of us.
You got out of prison last night?
Well, I was locked up for 3.5 years, and I was taken to the halfway house on August 29th.
Robert Morse says he was released from a halfway house in Pittsburgh late last night and came to D.C. to celebrate.
Back up!
Morse, a former Army Ranger, was found guilty of assaulting police officers, among other crimes, on January 6th.
I had no intention of going anywhere near the Capitol that day. That's how crazy this got. So a lot of people were taken advantage of, and we were lured into a lobster trap that January 6th was designed to be.
In terms of personal responsibility, do you regret?
Completely, without a doubt. I said that in my sentencing speech. I said the words, Donald Trump did not force me or coerce me to do what I did that day. I did it on my own accord.
What's your message to people watching this who say, she shouldn't have been pardoned, none of these people should have got out of prison, they're criminals?
Okay, you know what? It's time to stop worrying about that. And
Dude, that's the peak, okay? That's the most awesome way to be, to just be like, you don't understand, okay? No matter what, I will go to jail on my own. Please do not harm my president, who said I was bad right after it became politically unpopular. Like, dude, being that cucked is crazy. No, I'm not going to go back. There's no obligatory go back. You know, there's no go back policies here, okay? He called it a lobster trap and then proceeded to say how he fell for the lobster trap. Yeah. Attacking the seat. Yeah. Here's the latest standing. Attacking the seat of the U.S. government, beating the shit out of cops, saying you're going to arrest and possibly hang the Republican vice president of the party that you are a supporter of is peaceful. 18-year-olds camping and playing guitar on their own university campus. Worse terror attack than 9/11. They're all Hamas. They're all actually being brainwashed by the Iranian mullahs. Okay, the Ayatollah is basically on college campuses, and we have to bring in the terror squad. Incredible. Now, of course, make no mistake. These guys are also simultaneously Antifa. Okay, they're simultaneously agents of the FBI and Antifa at the same time, because initially they were like, "Oh, it's Antifa that did this," when they were like, "Oh, this is violent and unacceptable," and that's because Antifa did this. Okay, it's Antifa, except they didn't prosecute the Antifa; they only prosecuted the brave patriots that were political prisoners, and also it wasn't even violent at all. Okay. It wasn't even violent at all. It was just a peaceful day at the Rotunda.
move forward in this country.
And Donnie joins us now. What's happening at the...
Aren't we doing hypocrisy baiting? Or is this just entertainment? I don't know. I'm high. No. I come at this with the understanding that virtually no one cares about this. Like, the broad majorities of the American public are not as invested in the story as the way that the media presents it. It's just funny. It's entertainment. Okay? This is one of the least impactful aspects of the Trump administration, okay? It's one of the least impactful aspects of the Trump administration, and it is, you know, it's not something that I think a lot of people truly care about, but the ones that do really care about it, okay? The ones that care about January 6th really care about it. What I mean by this is, on the Republican side, the ones that are like the immediate family members, with the exception of the Hasan head, who has to now go into hiding because his dad is out of prison. The Republicans that really care about it are elated. They're super excited. that Trump actually pardoned these guys and emboldened them. Okay. On the liberal side, the ones who care about it really care about it as well. But the number of people, especially on the liberal side, that really care about this are obviously super marginal. And even if they say, even if they respond to a poll and they say like, oh, I think this is like really disrespectful or whatever, it ultimately does not matter because the American government, you know, Democratic control, Republican control, doesn't really matter. The American government doesn't really do things that people have a lot of negative feelings about anyway, or a lot of positive feelings about anyway. Like the American government doesn't really abide by the democratic wishes of the broad majorities of the public, right?
The jail tonight, what are you saying?
Hey, Anderson, yeah, just in the past few minutes, 3 more January 6ers were just released.
I think it's pretty impactful to essentially give Americans immunity for any crimes in the name of the president, right? No, that will have really important implications down the line for sure. I think that especially when you factor in like organized militias that have only grown in size and influence in the time frame that these guys went to jail, it definitely is a terrifying precedent later down the line. But that's usually not what people are talking about in this situation. Most people are just looking at this and talking about how hypocritical it is that Trump is doing this, myself included. But make no mistake, I'm just, I'm talking about it from the aspect of like entertainment and hogwatch, and the hypocrisy baiting is not like the major point that I'm trying to address here at all.
From the DC jail here, you can see they're giving interviews to local media and international.
Yeah. I also want to once again address the broader point here, which is that you cannot try to catch Republicans in hypocrisy. It didn't work the last election cycle, and it didn't work the election cycle in the past as well. Like when Trump was president, this is all liberals did, okay? This is all the hashtag resistance liberalism was about. Oh, now we think it's okay when Trump does it. It's like, yeah, no, they just genuinely don't care, and they genuinely do think it's okay when Trump does it, and they will act like they care when the Democrats actually do something that comes across as hypocritical. It's the strategy. It's the game plan. If anything, I think liberals should learn from that. This is something that I have advocated for quite a bit. Most famously on the Pod Save America interview that I had that went viral in a lot of liberal circles, where I said, I want the Democrats to fight. I want a competent Democratic Party that is willing to fight, okay? Willing to fight for good things, willing to fight for the common good, even if it doesn't come across as inherently popular or immediately popular. And I want them to expend social and political capital on things that actually do materially improve people's lives. Okay? I want them to do that in the same way that Trump does, right? Because Trump does that. This is one of the things that I wouldn't say necessarily admire about Donald Trump, but this is one of the things that I think Donald Trump does very well. If there is something that he can get an easy W off of, okay? If there's something that will return, like if there are a group of people out there that are genuinely passionate about a particular issue, even if it's like, kind of unpopular or whatever in the eyes of the broad majority, like these are low-hanging fruit things for him. He just will go and he'll secure those votes. This is one of those instances. He also has obviously a tendency to be very telegenic and knows how to draw in a crowd and make people pay attention to him. And he did precisely that with his executive order signatures that he conducted on the first day, right? On the day of the inauguration. Like he knows how to keep people paying attention to what he's doing and present it as a positive. It's one of the, I would say, worst aspects of the Joe Biden administration was the fact that it was led by a guy who was a crippled old man who genuinely couldn't do that. He could not even actively communicate some of the good things that they were doing, albeit marginal, but they still could have done a better job of conveying that message to the public, to be like, see, these are the things that we're doing. Donald Trump is a great marketer. Problem is, the things he's marketing are usually very bad. Right? Why is Charlie Kirk such a Trump cock gobbler on Twitter? It's insufferable. There's no analysis, just dick riding at the likes the world has never seen before. I mean, come on, dude. Let him do his victory dances, you know? They won, and he played a big role in it, you know? This guy actively was door knocking in Arizona. He is in Trump's orbit. That's his job. His job is to gobble Trump's penis. So legitimate question, legally, doesn't that mean that storming the Capitol should be legal as a takeaway here? No, dude, it doesn't work that way. That is actually what I was trying to explain with the hypocrisy here, which is that both the hypocrisy baiting from liberals don't work, and that Donald Trump actually making it functionally legal to storm the Capitol, that doesn't apply to you, okay? If you tried to do that, you would get killed. Do you understand? If you try to do that, you get killed. When Republicans tried to do that, they basically walked in, cops basically led them in, and got their ass beat in the process, and then Trump came back and pardoned all of them. But that doesn't extend to you, is my point. This is why whenever liberals talk about like, oh, if we violate these norms, then the Republicans will violate it down the line. My response always has been, hello, they already do violate all the norms. What are you talking about? The only precedent that this is setting is that as long as you do it at the behest of Trump, you'll be protected from legal scrutiny. That's it. It doesn't work for you. It doesn't work in the opposite direction. Okay? Yeah, apparently a lot of people are losing their minds over the church service that took place, and I think is really funny, so I will obviously cover that as well. The difference is Democrats will say things like, oh no, Trump revoked XYZ Act instead of saying Trump had defunded your bridges and roads. Yep.
Press also gathered, but also a lot of MAGA media here. And one person who's just speaking over there, who I think we're showing on screen at the moment, is Jake Lang. He's a prisoner who has really built up a big social media following while he has been in prison over the past while. He's speaking there. So really, you can see just how emboldened these folks are. A lot of them are kind of going off and planning basically MAGA media careers. But what we've also seen here over the past few hours today is different groups and people, obviously big fans of us here, Anderson, groups gathering throughout the day, including the Proud Boys here. So really gives you a sense of the types of folks who are celebrating, at least here at the DC jail.
All right, Donia Sullivan, appreciate it.
Many of the president's allies would like to stop talking about the deadly assault on the Capitol, but Trump's sweeping pardons making that difficult, as the president himself was pressed by reporters on the issue when he spoke to them yesterday.
Aren't you sending the message that assaulting officers is okay with these pardons?
No, the opposite. No, I am the friend of police more than any president that's ever been in this office.
Donald Trump insisting that despite his decision to pardon hundreds of people convicted of violent felonies and a power that he alone wields, insisting he supports law enforcement more than any president ever. When asked about specific cases, including that of Metropolitan Police Officer Michael Fanone, who was attacked and injured while defending the Capitol 4 years ago, the president seemed to be unaware of the details of the convictions that he chose to wipe away.
You would agree that it's never acceptable to assault a police officer,
Sure.
right? So then if I can, among those you pardoned, DJ Rodriguez, he drove a stun gun into the neck of a DC police officer who was abducted by the mob that day. He later confessed on video to the FBI and pleaded guilty for his crimes. Why does he deserve a pardon?
Well, I don't know. Was it a pardon? Because we're looking at commutes and we're looking at pardons. Okay, well, we'll take a look at everything.
Was it a pardon, he asks? Yes, one that only he has the power to deliver. Joining us now, Stephen Collinson, CNN senior politics reporter, Elliot Williams, CNN legal analyst, a former federal prosecutor, Congressman Jake Auchincloss, Democrat of Maryland, Massachusetts, and Kristen Soltis Anderson, CNN political commentator and Republican strategist and pollster. Welcome to all of you. Thank you for being here. Congressman, this, of course, a return to the original first Trump administration, where members of the body in which you serve often repeatedly asked to defend what Donald Trump has done. This, what happened on January 6th, was something that was an absolute cataclysm for the institution. Many of your colleagues were trapped in the House chamber, had to be escorted out by law enforcement as rioters tried to breach the doors. What do you have to say to your colleagues there, as some of them are trying, not all of them are defending what Trump has done, but what goes through your mind when you watch that?
Congressional Republicans are all ducking and dodging, and I never want to hear them say back the blue ever again after providing political cover for this abomination. These are people who violently assaulted officers of the law while trying to insurrect our democracy. It's not just these pardons, by the way. Last Congress, the Republicans tried to defund the FBI. This term, they're seeking to undermine the ATF's ability to regulate ghost guns. These are weapons that can pass through a metal detector without being detected. All of these things make officers of the law less safe and undermine our ability to enforce the law in this country. And yet they try to claim that they're the law and order party. It's no longer supportable.
Dude, this is, you know what this reminds me of? You know what this reminds me of before we move on to some other stuff here? This reminds me of the endless need for the Democratic Party to run patriotic candidates, okay? Like, this reminds me of when Donald Trump came out and was like, John McCain is a loser. I like my war heroes who weren't captured. And everyone was like, this is surely going to take him down. Last election, last time Trump won the election, if you remember. And the Democrats were like, finally, we can be the patriotic party, okay? Finally, let's keep running the most boring, annoying, technocratic, smarmy veterans and try to maintain this position that in the South, we are the actual party that cares about patriotism. Look at all our veterans that we're posting. Look at all our veterans that we're putting forward. Not realizing that no one cares. Okay? No one cares. And this is what this is what the Democrats have always done. They've always done this. And now they think they're going to be like, well, it's obvious that the Republicans are not the law and order party. It's like, dude, what are you talking about? They don't care, man. I don't know how to describe this to you. You cannot outflank the Republicans on patriotism. They own it, okay? It's not in the United States of America. The collective consciousness surrounding patriotism is not what you think it is, okay? It's not what you think it is. Patriotism in America is not represented by, actually respecting the veterans and showing reverence or whatever. It's actually about how racist you can be about Muslim people or whoever America's enemies are at that time. Okay? It is completely and entirely dominated by the right wing. They control that narrative. They control the standards of patriotism. If you think that you have any say in reframing patriotism from a liberal perspective, you are delusional. Okay? It's almost as delusional as thinking that people care about the civility and the optics of it all. No one cares. It's almost as delusional as thinking that the incredibly divisive and sectarian nature of simply hyper focusing on identity markers as a mechanism of undermining progressive people within the ranks of your own party. Just a major own. No one cares. Okay? Republicans do it all the time too. No one actually cares. Like the cancel culture stuff is just so stupid. Hyper focusing on that and thinking that this is a reasonable way to do politics is so bad. It just makes you look like a freaking HR manager, okay? It's so dumb. Just do things that help people. Please, for the love of Christ, do things that help people and actively talk about how you're doing those things and market them. But it seems like the Democratic Party has decided, no, we're just going to be the gay, smarmy version of the Republicans. Okay? That's it. You will never be able to decouple reactionary right-wing politics from law and order messaging. Okay? It does not matter because the entirety of the right-wing messaging is about dominating the field of law and order in the way that they think is law and order. The same goes for free speech. Okay? When Americans talk about free speech, the way that they understand free speech is basically when Americans talk about free speech, they're talking about slurs, being able to say slurs and not having any repercussions for being able to say slurs. They're not talking about actual speech that undermines the pre-existing hierarchies. They're not talking about free speech that's like saying, Israel sucks or whatever. They're talking about the freedom to say slurs without repercussions. That's the way that they talk about free speech. And it's not about the government actually coming in and offering legal penalties for you saying whatever. It's actually just private companies and private organizations not deboosting you or shadow banning you or whatever people believe is happening. Okay? That's what this is about. And there is no greater indication of this inherent silliness, okay, than the way that Marco Rubio and many other Republicans have talked about what they're going to do, what their mandate is going forward. on the one hand, as the leaked State Department memo that came out from Ken Klippenstein that we covered yesterday, Marco Rubio said they're going to go after DEI, okay? One of the scariest things that Marco Rubio also mentioned was in the bullet points in the memo that he was sending to the State Department, okay? The new Secretary of State that was voted in unanimously, including by the likes of Bernard Sanders, by the way, big L for Bernard there, was that he was going to combat anyone that tries to dare tarnish free speech, but also simultaneously go after people for un-American sentiment. Those two things are, if you understand the theoretical concept of what free speech represents, those two things are inherently at odds with one another. You can't on the one hand say, we are going to be the defenders of the free speech, and then simultaneously say, and we're going to make sure that people are adequately punished for supporting terrorism or for, not being in line with American values and common sense. That means you're going to go after speech. That's what that means. But that is precisely the way that they're going to go about this, where they're just being like, we're the free speech defenders, and also simultaneously, we are going to take out any kind of political opposition.
See President Donald Trump's immigration.
Anyway, but, one funny moment from the pardoned January 6 rioters is that one of them already got arrested on gun charges. Trump granted clemency to hundreds of alleged or convicted violent criminals. One is back behind bars because a man accused of assaulting a law enforcement officer and tossing an explosive device into a Capitol tunnel on January 6 was rearrested just days after receiving a pardon. His name is Daniel Ball of Homosassa, Florida. That's an awesome name. Homosassa, Florida. On May 2023, was indicted on 12 counts related to his participation in the attack on the Capitol. Charges against him included assaulting, resisting, or impeding certain officers with a deadly or dangerous weapon, using fire and explosive to commit any felony, and knowingly engaging in any act of physical violence while carrying or using a deadly or dangerous weapon. Okay? Ball was accused of throwing an explosive device that detonated upon at least 25 officers in the Capitol's Lower West Terrace Tunnel, injuring law enforcement personnel. On Tuesday, Ball's case was dismissed following President Trump's blanket pardon to over 1,500 defendants charged with offenses related to the attempted insurrection. Less than a day later, the Department of Justice re-arrested Ball on a separate pending charge related to the unlawful possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. This sassy-ass homo is going back to jail, baby. Homo Sassy's very own. He couldn't make it. He couldn't make it out in the real world, chat. He's done. January 6th was nowhere near Ball's first brush with law enforcement. 3 previous felony convictions, including 4 domestic violence, battery by strangulation, resisting law enforcement with violence, and battery against a law enforcement officer, are listed in the charging documents. While Ball was nabbed on a pending charge unrelated to January 6th, the president's widespread amnesty for January 6 offenders let hundreds of individuals charged or convicted of violence during the attack off the hook. Look at that. Ball, any relation to LaMelo? Yeah, this is the lost Ball brother. That's what happened. Can liberals not concede just once? I hate Marco Rubio on a personal... I mean, he has a globe emoji on his account. Of course he's going to say he likes Marco Rubio. He's doing the thing that I said he was going to do. He's doing the thing that I said liberals were going to say, which is that Marco Rubio is far from the worst option as the Secretary of State because he's a competent, pro-American empire person with a long-standing track record within Congress. He is an establishment elite politician. So, of course, Democrats are perfectly on board with this. They could have had someone like Tulsi Gabbard be the Secretary of State. That's the calculation that they're making. I hate Marco Rubio on a personal and policy level, but he's a perfectly acceptable Secretary of State nomination for a Republican president. No reason for Senate Dems to die on that hill when there's a whole mountain range of terrible nominees. There it is. Yes, this is the constant conciliatory calculation that liberals engage with. First of all, Homosassa is a native name like Mikasuki. Yeah, I suspected. I want to explain something here. Democrats, as a party, regardless of, my disagreements with them, should operate like the Republicans. And what that means is you should just block regardless. You should block and push regardless. What are you doing? It literally does not matter. In this day and age, obstructionism is not actually something that comes along with a penalty. It comes with rewards. Obviously, that's what the Republicans have proven time and time again. Just obstruct. Who cares? It takes $0 to be annoying and obstruct. It doesn't make any sense. Just obstruct and craft a reasonable narrative as to why you're doing so. Because Republicans operate as though every Democratic leadership is supposed to hire Republicans for these positions, and they do obstruct on that basis. Whereas the Democrats don't do that. The Democrats are like, well, let's be the adults here. This is a reasonable calculation that we're making. Marco Rubio is far more sane than the other candidates, and there's truth to that. There is truth to that. But just obstruct. Who cares? Who cares? Unless you personally also like Marco Rubio to be in that position. And many Democrats do like Marco Rubio in that position, for the record. But Republicans, on the other hand, even if they actually like a Democratic candidate who might even be a Republican or might be incredibly conservative, will still obstruct because they understand how partisan politics works in this country. You should not be operating on the standard that like, oh, well, he's better overall and that we must be adults, please. You should be operating on the standard of the Republicans, them, okay? Them. And I don't mean like literally have sex with them, because many Democrats want to do that. They want to get their backs blown out by the Republican Party in general, okay? It's very frustrating. Very, very, very frustrating. Okay? I mean, like, them. Like, no, we're not doing anything. Even if you like a guy, even if they turn around and actually put forth a Democrat in a position of power, you should be like, nah, we don't want it. We're going to obstruct anyway. That's what the Republicans do. But if they obstruct and somehow Republicans place someone worse, then what? Wait, what a great question. First of all, it doesn't matter. Marco Rubio was going to pass regardless whether they obstruct or not. Why are you aesthetically offering a victory of hollow bipartisanship to the Republican Party for no reason? What do you mean, a worse person? Okay, obstruct that too. If you have the capacity to obstruct Marco Rubio, you have the capacity to obstruct against whoever the other candidates are too, What are you talking about? Pop Crave is doing better anti-Trump work than the Democratic Party. Yeah. Donald Trump is now allowing ICE agents to make arrests in and near schools and churches, by the way, which was previously a bridge too far. If you recall, there was famous stories of like undocumented migrants like sheltering inside of a church in order to avoid ICE raids. They remember that. And so this time around, they're like, nope, you're going into schools and churches too, and medical places as well, hospitals. It was just a question. I am not a meritard. My bad. No, I wasn't being like, no, it was just a question, dude. I am not a meritard. What the fuck? I have not heard this term before. I wasn't even mad at you. I'm just heated in general. Sorry if it came across like I was yelling at you. I'm just yelling, chatter. Oh, by the way, here's Trump ally Charlie Kirk going on an unhinged rant about Martin Luther King again.
In our piece that Kirk describes King as, quote, a bad guy. It's true. And Kirk's self-described very, very radical view that the country made a mistake when it passed the Civil Rights Act. Also true. As we note in the piece, Kirk has previously described Kirk as a hero and a civil rights icon. It's true. I used to be wrong. What inspired Kirk to shift his view on MLK? Why does Kirk think that MLK is a bad guy? When Kirk says that MLK says, quote, one good thing he didn't believe, what does he mean by that? Why does Kirk believe passing the Civil Rights Act was a mistake? Now, again, apparently they don't listen to the show because we do that at least once a week, right? Once a week we talk about why the Civil Rights Act was a mistake.
That's an insane... Dude, that is insane, dude. You called this? Look at how much anti-Semitism is in the replies. Ha ha ha, holy f***. TikTok must have got an APAC guy. I guess it swung the other way, and that's why it's back. What do you mean? Your thoughts on this? I guess people should use red now. Oh, look, it's Eastern Standard Time again. Maybe I was wrong about TikTok. Seems based. No, most of the people are just like dunking on the stupid liberals who are pro-Palestine. Tim Pool is not necessary. Tim Pool will entertain anti-Semitic conspiracies, but he's not exactly a supporter of Palestine or even a critic of Israel. I don't know if you guys have realized that. He actually is pro-Israel, and that's kind of a heated point of contention in his community as well, because like his fan base, some of his fans are obviously anti-Israel for, sometimes good reasons and in many instances bad reasons. Okay. You know what I'm talking about. So this is not surprising that most of the people are just going, yeah, this kind of censorship is awesome, actually. Yeah. What is this? Radlibs have gone dangerously close to anti-MLK take. What is this? Wasn't MLK assassinated in a motel room during an orgy with white prostitutes? Are we pleased? No. Stop. I'm not entertaining that shit. Okay. I'm not even remotely entertained. Dude, I've done this already. I've had a foray into this before. Stop. Okay. It's crazy to me that Azealia Banks is doing the propaganda that the FBI tried to do. Like, that's crazy, man. Radical liberalism is so brain rotted. Also, Azealia Banks is like insane. Please stop. She has no motion. Please don't do that. Oh, yeah, there's this part that I'm going to talk about today as well. Breaking. Donald Trump has ordered communications blackout in America's federal health agencies per Washington Post. The CDC, FDA, HHS, and NIH have all been told to pause external communications, including publishing scientific reports, updating websites, or issuing health advisories. One of them was supposed to be about the potential bird flu. Okay, that's kind of been ripping through the poultry and egg supply, for the record. Yeah. Good thing that we don't need to know about that. Yeah. How the U.S. lost control of bird flu, setting the stage for another pandemic. As the bird flu virus moved on to cows and people, sluggish federal action, deference to industry, and neglect for worker safety put the country at risk. Yeah. Plandemic 2, baby. It's a double whammy. It's a double whammy because this also actually contributes to the cost of living crisis. Okay. It actually contributes to the cost of living crisis as well, because if you rip through the poultry or even the meat stock in general, like beef stock as well, because it's like skipping in, it's actually made its way into the cows as well. It's not only devastating for the population if it jumps to humans, but it also is devastating in general because it basically cooks the existing poultry stock and egg stock. Now, that will increase the prices for eggs. It'll increase the price for chicken. Having said that, okay, it's great because not only will the federal government be ill-equipped to deal with this now, even worse than under the Brandon regime, but also now the FDA might not actually, in an effort to keep up with the demands of the people that want to eat chicken and eat eggs, maybe the FDA will be forced to look the other way. Maybe the FDA will be forced to look the other way in terms of bird flu ripping through the population by way of the chickens that they're eating, by way of the eggs that they're consuming. I don't know. Great stuff. But hey, fear not. We have the World Health Organization that can help it. Oh, damn it. Yeah. Yeah. From the people that brought you no vaccine mandates will now come mandated holistic medicine for your bird flu as you're dying. RFK Jr. will come visit you and give you and shove colloidal silver pills down your throat to save your life. Your fault eating pig ass full of antibiotics and other functional amount. Enjoy your disease, meat eaters. Yeah. Famously, bird flu jumping over to humans and having an incredibly high lethality rate will never actually end up impacting vegans. So, yeah. Dude, everything goes back to why the fire department has to be a social service that's publicly funded. You understand? There is a reason why a lot of this stuff that we're talking about is controlled by the federal government. There's a reason why the fire department has to be local and public as a public service. You understand? Because fire skips. And you know what else skips? Diseases. Okay? They fire jumps from house to house, structure to structure, burning everything in its everything and anything in its way. Okay? Just like diseases don't care if you're vegan or not. Also, anyway, I'm not even gonna get into it. Dude, it's legit about to be 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Yeah. I'm not like a super genius Hasan, but I think the point the chatter was making might have been that if more people go vegan, there will be less reliance on meat consumption, which would help not exacerbate the issue. Okay, dude. Yeah, you're right. That's what we should have done. We should have just like magically got people to be on board with this. Please stop. I don't want to get into this. Vegans are right. Vegans are morally right. I'm a morally repugnant person who can't control himself, and I still love consuming animal products. Let's just not get into it, please. I'm not going to do a vegan debate right now in the midst of like the Burger Reich. Okay, please, eyes on the prize. Okay, one of the things that I've always consistently been an advocate for also is like, one, making the meat production and poultry production more ethical as you possibly can, and greatly limiting it by the federal regulatory agencies, while also simultaneously looking for and investing greatly in alternative non-meat substitutes that taste and look and feel exactly like the meat products. This is a thing that I advocate for all the time, because I understand that these kinds of changes can only happen at the systemic level, and it's not going to work in a decentralized movement, okay? Especially in a country like the United States of America, where treats are supreme. We care about treats more than anything else. Okay. One of the most popular ways in which people have actually criticized the Green New Deal has been the false association with AOC trying to take your burger away. Americans are cheeseburger people. They're hamburger people. And even the fake lie that your hamburgers are going to be taken away created so much controversy for a bill that actually wasn't going to do that anyway. Okay. Anyway, hamburger. U.S. military orders. I digress. Let's get back to the issue at hand. U.S. military orders thousands more troops to the southern border.
Policies go into effect. Officials tell CNN that the U.S. military is sending thousands of additional troops to the southern U.S. border. This comes just 2 days after President Trump ordered the military to step up its presence there. About 2,200 active duty forces are already at the border as part of Joint Task Force North. They're mostly performing support roles for Customs and Border Patrol. Officials say the new arrivals will be doing much of the same, as they're not authorized to perform any sort of law enforcement role. Let's bring in Natasha Bertrand, who's at the Pentagon for us. So, Natasha, what more do we know at this point?
Yeah, Zane, so we know at this point that the U.S. military is ordering thousands of additional active duty troops to the border to augment Customs and Border Patrol activities and mission operations down there. But they're not going to be engaged in any kind of law enforcement role, because that is actually banned by a law, by a centuries-old law called Posse Comitatus, which prevents the U.S.